If you want to know where PTs go wrong with return to sport decisions, you have to tune into this episode. Uh, Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know where PTs go wrong with return to sport decisions, you have to tune into this episode. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new? What is life? What is new and what is new in life? I have some updates. It's been a big week. If there's a few things that I can help you stay focused along your career path, is that I think if you understand that there's always going to be moving parts to your life, it's just the nature of growth. And along that journey, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be bumps in the road, there's going to be like highs, there's going to be lows. And I think if you understand that journey and you expect it, it makes it easier. And so there's always moving parts. With my kids, I've got flag football. We just started that again, and my daughter Alex officially is interested in ballet, and I'm all for it. I'm just about exposure, so I'm interested to see if she follows through with it. One thing I can tell you is throughout this process, as we go through this journey together, one of the things I can support you with and tell you professionally as you continue to grow. And I preach this to my team, I preach it to my family. It's just open communication. And I like to have that with my team. I like to have it with especially my wife, your partner, whoever it is. They got to know what's going on, your kids. And that helps us along any part of wherever you are. So open communication. Personally, what is happening? My Somebody asked me what my morning routine is. I start at 4:30. I do a little bit of like self meditation. I do a little bit of sauna. I will do an audiobook or a podcast, and I get my coffee together. I get my to-do list. I do my top 5 things for the day. I get my top 3 things, non-negotiables have to happen today. Working on that, working on refining my morning process. My fitness, I'm back to training 5, 6 days a week. So it's been good after the cut. SP with sports performance, we're onboarding. We've got content courses. It is busy. On the Chris Garcia Academy side, we've got the foundations webinar coming up next week or the following week on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I hope you registered for that. It's on my website. It's on my link in bio. It's all over the place. I have a VIP day that I'm introducing to the Chris Garcia Academy. If you want to come on the boat with me, if you want to attend my next 2 courses, the Sports PT Foundations, if not Management of the Barbell Athlete. And so, as you can tell, there's just a lot of moving parts, and that's what I mean by this. I do love the chaos, and so it's just really trying to stay ahead of it. So, all right, let's go on to the podcast. What are we talking about today? So, one of the things that we review as a team at Sports Performance, we look at what is going right, what is not ideal, which athletes aren't getting better, what's the current challenge, and we'll go through seasons of like working with youth athletes, I'm working with adult athletes, I'm working with pro athletes, and the theme of the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks of what I've seen is anytime that we're talking about returning an athlete or a patient to a specific goal, whatever that is, there's a very, very critical time point that you have to make decisions on. And if you want to get them back to sport, whether that's a competition or a tournament or a soccer game or whatever it is, there's things that you can do to line up your plan of care a little bit more seamlessly. And I wanted to share the feedback that I'm giving, the feedback that I'm hearing, so to be able to help you be more successful with your outcomes. So here's a couple things. And what I mean by that is, at my upcoming Sports PT Foundations course, I'm working on how to get people back to sport without flare-ups, in a very efficient time point. And a lot of this comes from working with pro athletes and working in professional sports. And there's a lot of things that I learned that I will do and I will not do moving forward. And so I've taken kind of the top things that I would include, and I'm going to share those in podcast today. So as you, wherever you are in the spectrum, where if you're just like brand new to a new grad, or you've been practicing for a long time, you're like, what do I need to do to fine tune? There's going to be information in here for everyone. So stay focused on the big picture. Okay. So where PTs go wrong with return to sport decisions, this is my passion. This is truly like what I love. I love tight timelines. I love athletes that have a very challenging case because it challenges you as a clinician. You always think that you're doing well, and then a hard case comes at you, and you're like, darn it, I'm humbled again, and you like love that. It's just addicting just to be able to continue to refine your processes. So I'll give you a couple scenarios, and there's been some tight timelines that I've had in my career, and I've done some podcasts in them, and I don't. I would do them again in a heartbeat. I would have changed a couple things along that journey, and every patient, every athlete's so different. But I'm gonna give you my framework on how, if somebody says to me, "Hey, Chris, I just sprained my ankle and I have to get back to soccer, pro soccer, or college soccer or high school soccer within 6 weeks or 4 weeks. Let's do a shorter timeline, 4 weeks." So as you go through these cases, you're gonna be like, oh, well, I don't know. Yeah, that makes sense. That's what I would do. But it's easier when you like listen to things and you can rationalize on the back end. You have time and you can plan. And so one of the things I'm going to talk to you about is creating the outline, so that way it seems very logical to you, because by the time the athlete comes to you and you're like they're in front of you, it becomes very challenging to be logical, because you're like you're in front of them. There's so much more pressure in front. So here's a couple things. Let me outline this. All right. Number one, you got to have a plan first. So before, at my last course, which we did, the Strength and Conditioning Summit, I learned that we as PTs, we jump to the exercise. We jump to the thing that we are good at, which is like exercise design, right? And I think we're really good at progressions too, but I think we naturally go towards the exercise before we design the program. And I think because we like the creativity part, we're like, oh, how am I gonna get the infraspinatus to be active there, or serratus there, whatever. And I think we get joy off of that. It gives us fulfillment. So before you even do any of that, we're going to build the skeleton first. So you got to plan first, and I think this is always the challenge that people have. So I'm going to undo what you currently your current thought process, and hear me out before you start to think, well, I would have done this. Doesn't matter. Just listen to the plan first. Create the plan first. So you have to do a needs analysis first. So if an athlete says, "Hey, I got a soccer game in 4 weeks," okay, so if do I have wiggle room here? Are they the number one player? Are they going to be on the bench? Do they need to play the whole game? But this is going to be a factor based on the athlete's response, the coach's response, and or the parent if they're part of this whole thing. So you kind of have to do a needs analysis, figure out what the true needs are, like what's the priority, how do they need to be able to play 90 minutes in the full game? Are they a center mid? What position are they? So do your needs analysis. Once you have that lined up, you got to build the framework first. So if they have to go back at 4 weeks and they have to be able to play full throttle, and they only have to play half the game. So we know their fitness has to only be able to tolerate half the game. All right, that makes it a little easier on us. What's the timeline? 4 weeks, great. How close to the game do they have to be able to practice full throttle? 1 week, the coach says. The coach says, I'm not going to put them in until they can practice 100% or close to 100% for 1 full week leading to the game. Wow, so I actually only have 3 weeks to make this work. So if we work backwards again, when are they going to get back into like linear or multi-directional sprints before they even touch contact? Well, let's do week 3. So actually, I only have 2 weeks to rehab this person. Well, when are you going to start, basic integration to impact, or you're going to start now doing change of direction, or you're going to start doing box jumps or any form of advanced exercises? Well, I'd start that at week 3. Okay, so then what are we doing week 2? So week 2 is now, week 1 is just get the edema down, and number 2 is get them strong. So you actually only have 1 week to calm them down, get them non-antalgic gait. You actually have only 1 week to get them strong, flexible, mobile, and then you have to be able to work into plyometrics and multi-directional work, and then you have to be able to get back to practice. No, there's your outline. Before you even talked about any fancy exercise that you want to do, it doesn't matter. Like, does it even work? Does the skeleton exist? And you're like, whoa, I don't know. I don't know if they could do that. Could right now, logically in your head, as you listen to this, uh, could you get somebody back in 4 weeks? Like going back by that timeline, they need 1 week to practice, 1 week of plyo multi-directional work, 1 week of strength, and 1 week of edema management. Is that possible? Now you have to look at, is this person under 18? Do they have youth juice? Are they young and they heal a little faster? Or is this person 28 years old and they're playing intramural soccer? Different pathways, different motivation, different healing timelines. But that's what goes into this whole needs analysis thing. So when you create when somebody's approaching you and you have this information, you kind of have to put that into a skeleton before you even move forward. If you don't do that, like, don't talk to me about exercise. Don't talk to me about, like, would you do counter movement, non-counter movement? Would you do linear work? Like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to know, is this work going to work? So the one of the big things that people make a mistake on when you're doing return to sport progressions is this has to be outlined first. If you don't have this outline, I can't talk to you because I can't play the game of which sprint drill would you do? I don't care. I need to know, does this work on paper? Because if not, we're all wasting our time and you're using hopium. You're just hoping that things work out, and that never works. It rarely works. So number one is failure to plan. That's where they go wrong. PTs go wrong because they fail to plan and they just use hopium. Just hope. Doesn't work. On paper, it doesn't work. And in the pros, there's many times that early in my career, so for those who don't know, I did a residency at the Ohio State University. I worked for the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista, California for 3 years, and then I worked pro sports and traveled internationally for three years. I did NFL combine preparation, and during that time, I learned a lot that timelines are critical, and the more importantly, the GM and the owner of the organization, they want to know, is this going to work or not? So anytime you're working maybe in the NFL or you hear these individuals are hurt, the first thing they're doing is, what's the map? Is this person going to get back? So when they say, oh, he'll be back to practice in 2 weeks, when you do the math on paper, like, is that possible? Truly, like, somebody dislocates a shoulder, how many weeks are they out? Minimum 4, maybe 6, maybe 8. I don't know what the pressure is. Are they using injections? Are they using any form of invasive or non-invasive procedures? What are the options? So you got to look at the timeline. So you say, like, oh, I could totally help them get back to sport. Show me on paper. Tell me what that is, because you're just going to go week by week, which doesn't work. And you got to where PTs go wrong is failure to plan. That's the number one. Okay. Now, number two, you need to manage the outside variables that will negatively impact your progression. So, for instance, this is something we did at our team meeting. We have every Tuesday, and we go over tough cases. And one of them was managing outside variables. And so if this athlete has a part-time job, or they work at a bank and they stand all day, or they're at a computer and they have shoulder pain and their ergonomics are poor, like, that's going to negatively impact what you're doing on the skeleton and during treatment. So you need to undo or manage the outside variables so that your work of art, your painting, that your this picture that you're painting is working, or actually working in the direction that you want. So outside variables will crush you. If this person works at they work construction, oh my goodness, that's gonna be really hard to balance. And now I'm not saying that you can't stop them from work, but it's going to go into your equation. Is this possible? And if they stand on their feet and there was an ankle sprain and they have to stand on their feet and they have to move boxes in a warehouse, that's going to negatively impact their performance, and that's going to impact your progression. Like, now, if I said that worked perfectly for 4 weeks to get this athlete with an ankle sprain back to sport, now if they work in a warehouse and they have to move and twist and do all these things, I don't know if it's going to be possible. They would have to take time off of work, or they have to modify stuff, or I don't know, whatever relationship they have with their employer. But that's a conversation to have, because what you're doing is you're trying to set them up for success. You're trying to build this pathway. So you have to manage outside variables, and that comes from really good questions. That comes from you asking, what do you do for work? How often are you standing? What else do you do? Do you have kids? Do you have stairs? How often do you wearing shoes? Are you wearing shoes in the house? Are you going to wear an edema control sock during the whole time? Like, all these things go into maximizing that outcome. And this is where I want you guys to change the way that you think about getting an athlete back to sport. We all, and I'm guilty of it, I have been, and I'm changing that and helping other people change that, that I've been guilty of going to the exercise first. Oh, I totally get it. Yeah, we're going to do ankle pumps. We're going to do all these cool things. We're going to do RDLs at the week 2. We're going to do all these things, but you never did the map. So you're like, oh yeah, we did it. We did ladder drills week 4. Well, my game was this weekend. You're like, oh, I missed it. Sorry. Or you try and rush things because you didn't plan, and you're like, well, let's just throw in plyos, ladders, and aggressive strengthening on that last week. That's risky. That's hope. You failed to plan on that one. So also managing the outside variables is a factor that needs to get done early, early, because if you figure that out too late, you're like, your percent improvement is not matching what the timeline is. And what you start to realize is like, oh, I didn't know that you weren't working. I didn't know that you had a kid. I didn't know that you had this. I didn't know that you were going to participate in a 5K fundraiser at week 2. I didn't know that. Well, that's your fault. You need to ask this person. It's your job as a clinician to set people up for success. And if you think that every patient or every athlete just doesn't listen to you, you ever thought that you're just not asking the questions so they can give you that information? Anytime that somebody doesn't get better, I get frustrated, but more so I'm like, where did I go wrong? They're the consumer. You are the professional. It is your fault. You have to figure out where this went wrong. Now, if you did everything that you could, you planned for them, you managed outside variables, and they didn't do it correctly, now it's okay, that's fine. But as long as you give them 3 things: the timeline, the resources, and the goal. My goal is to get you back by 4 weeks. What's the timeline? 4 weeks. What's the goal? Return to sport at 50%, 50% of the game. 90% better, a little bit of mild edema, pain is under a 2 or 3 out of 10, but you're able to play. That's my goal. That's my timeline. What are the resources? Here's the exact map. Here's the variables you're doing. Here's what you're not doing. Here's week by week progression. If you set them up and they don't work, if that doesn't work, whose fault is that? The patient, the athletes, but you did your job as a clinician to set them up for success. Now, if you say like, whoa, I wasn't even doing half of that, then that could also be your fault. And that's where I think where the frustration happens. I get it. Like I'm right there with you. I have the same frustrations that you do. I use try and set up people for success and they just don't do it. Like maybe the athlete didn't listen. They just went ahead and worked and they went into practice too early. I get it. There's ideal and there's like reality. So somewhere in there is a really good bridge. And I'm always trying to strive for that. And those athletes will listen once they can feel that you're genuinely doing it for them. So number 1, failure to plan. Number 2, manage outside variables that will mess up your artwork or your outcome. Next is you have to write that plan out, and it has to be like tangible to them so they can go back and see it as a resource, whether it's coach, parent, them. All right, so once you create that plan and now you have them, like you're like, all right, we're at week 1, we're in it to win it. Here's one thing I learned: you don't be aggressive early on with rehab. What I mean by that is, whatever your philosophy is, if you're a anti-inflammatory or you're a pro-inflammatory person, it doesn't matter. I'm saying don't go aggressive on this person. Most people will fail. Most PTs will fail because they overdo it early. I'm of the mindset, and I've seen it in the pro world, when we're dealing with like pro athletes, high level, you don't mess them up in the first 2 weeks. Do not be aggressive early on. Do not be aggressive early on. I will say it 1,000 times. You do it, great, and you get 1 or 2 people better faster, great. But it's too risky. Your name and reputation will be impacted if you keep messing up people. So, and you will do it in the first 2 weeks. That will ruin the person, because that's the most critical time point when you're going acute to subacute. Let that healing happen. Do not restart the inflammation process in those first 2 weeks. It will mess their rehab process up. Okay, don't go aggressive. Don't be aggressive early on. Less is more, I promise you. All right. So say, for instance, you do this right, you planned, you managed outside variables, you wrote out the plan, you weren't aggressive, and they're actually improving. What percent do you need to get them to so that they're successful before they return to sport? Like, do I have to pass all hop tests? Do they need to do vertical jumps? Do they need to do, a T test? What is it that they need to be able to do? Get them to 90%. Subjective report is going to be critical. You can test all you want, but if they don't feel ready to return to sport, they're not going to be ready. Get them to 90% subjective. They got to get there as close as possible. 88.2, great. That's really close. Like just get them to that point, and then use your testing to validate that. So if they say, hey, they're at 90, but their objective testing is at 60, that doesn't match. They're trying to get in a little too soon. I wouldn't do that. Now, if I've had this happen with a couple ACLs. Their objective tests are 90%, but their subjective is 60. What does that tell you? Their knee is ready, but their brain is not, which is the most important thing. That brain needs to be locked in, loaded, and secure that this thing is going to be safe. So they have to be in the same wheelhouse. Objective testing and subjective, get them to 90% if possible. Now, where I think that people mess up is that one, they don't count for that subjective report and match it to their objective testing. The second piece on that is they test them too close to performance. And what I mean by that is they'll like, okay, the game's on Saturday. So on Thursday, let's like do all your functional testing. You risk flaring them up or messing up the whole thing. So I would highly recommend, in an ideal world, you're testing around Monday or Tuesday at the latest, because you can give them 2 or 3 days if they have a reactive exacerbation, if they have edema. But at least you know ahead of time, can their body handle just a little bit? And you don't want to over test them because you want to save it for the game. You want to save as much as you can for the game, but you also want to have some confidence. Maybe you're working with a physician, you're working with a coach, and like, are they going to be ready to give them a good answer? Don't test beyond Monday or Tuesday. Don't do objective testing too close to the game. It is too risky. Yes, you're going to match the subjective, do testing not too far, too close to the game, and that helps you refine, is this person ready? This is an art. I'm telling you, I've done this thousands of times, and the art is always the art. There's science, and then there's the art of like, I shouldn't have done it on Tuesday. Should have done on Monday. They were a little flared up on Friday, but had I bumped it back one day, then it would have been at least a little bit less flared up, and they would have been able to play on Saturday. Or I was a little too aggressive at week 2. I should have waited one more week, so that week 3 would have been critical. I'll test early on in the week, and you're just kind of refining this process. And the more of these cases that you get, the better you get at them. So I'm giving you an outline because I've seen it, and this is exactly how I would treat it. And this is exactly how athletes will respond. Now, every case, I don't know the edema, I don't know the outside variables, I don't know the age, I don't know any of the training age, I don't know how good the caliber of athlete. There's so many variables into this. What I'm telling you is there's things looking at you, but you're not looking at them. Meaning, there's things you need to add to your toolbox in the sense of what's the framework or skeleton that I need to be able to set up this person for success. I'm not going to give you an exercise because I think you can get that on Instagram. I think you're going to get on YouTube, whatever. But the skeleton's off. No exercise is going to get you through this process. Now, the manual work and treatment and extra, whatever it is, you're the chef. You can figure that out, add all the spices that you want. But the skeleton, the recipe needs to be the recipe. Like, keep it simple. And you have to remember, if ultimately across this whole thing, what you're trying to do is you're trying to set the athlete up for success. If people ask me, what do we do as a profession? I am anti current philosophy of like we help them move and along the way, and we're the movement people, and we help people move like that. I think that's only a portion. Like if you really look at like how we treat people and we manage them, we are healthcare providers, which happen to do a little bit of movement. But notice that what I just framed work on return to sport, movement was one piece, but progressive overload and timelines is huge. Now, if you just focus on movement, it becomes very difficult to set this person up for success. So I'm not 100% on the like team movement that's the primary thing that we do for humans. I'm in there saying that's one piece of the whole Venn diagram of all the services that we do for people. I think that when we are working with somebody through progressive overload, timelines, movement, tissue work, all the above, I think our main job is not to relieve people of pain, but it's to develop confidence so they have tools so they're set up for success. Now, pain management happens along that journey, but ultimately, if this person, the reason why they're going to you, do you ever realize or think about why people go to a physical therapist is because they've either exhausted their resources of self-care, whether that's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, a book. I don't know if people do that anymore, a podcast, whatever it is. They've exhausted that and they're finally going to see somebody, or they've never known what physical therapy is and they like just don't even know where to start. Tell me what to do. Ultimately, both of those individuals are looking for education. 100%, right? The reason why somebody has exhausted all resources is they've done everything they can on their side from an educational standpoint. And the reason they're going for you to you is for education. The person who's never been experienced physical therapy is still coming to you for education. They're like, I don't even know where to start. Can you help me? Now, the the place where PT goes they go wrong is that they overload them with tactical information, meaning like, here's the best exercise, here's this, here's that, blah, blah. And they don't overload them with, here's a skeleton, here's what I call the bumpers. Don't do this for the next 3 weeks. Don't do this. You can work out this many times a week. Don't overload here. You're not running for 2 weeks. And at week 5, this is where you're going to be. That to them is more powerful because they know they have a pathway. People want to know a roadmap. They want the education on what do I need to look for? How do I manage it? And what do I need to look for? And is this possible to get me back to where I want by the timeline I want? So ultimately, you're just giving them confidence along the way that they're on that path. Once you've set it, all they need you in there is for checkpoints. Am I on that right path? Do I have the right things in place to set me up for success? And if you focus on exercise and movement, you miss the big picture. Is this roadmap set properly? Did you pave the way? And if they know what the actual roadmap is and you've set the bumper so they don't mess up left or right, you've done your job. Then you can insert movement, you can insert any exercise that you want, any techniques, BFR, dry needling, I don't care. But they got to know the roadmap, and you have to know the roadmap. So you got to know that you're not just focusing on movement, you're not just focusing on exercise, you're not just working on manual work, you're not just stretching, you're not just mobilizing, you're not just modalities. You are the confidence builder, you're the roadmap setter and the confidence builder, so that way your technical treatment is working in that fashion in the right direction. And I think that you need to understand that's all you're doing for people. You're building confidence and they know what to expect at each time point. You've set that. You're the pilot. You're like, all right, we're flying this way and there's gonna be a little turbulence here. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. You're on the right path. Along the way, I'm gonna mobilize this, I'm gonna tape this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do whatever soft tissue work, I'm gonna get you on to sprints and everything else. And they don't care about the exercise. What they care about is this inserted at the right time and is this gonna mess me up? That's like at the pro level, man, when you work with pros, they're very analytic. They like information. They like education more so because they want to be able to manage themselves. They understand. I think PTs go wrong because once they get a pro athlete, they overcorrect, they overeducate, all they want is a simple roadmap. Is this right? Am I on the right place? And that's all I need. There's checkpoints. You're just one more person and their entire team who's giving them information. And I think that we jump to do a little too much. We're aggressive early on. We don't plan. We go week by week. We give them exercises and movement, but with no progression or skeleton or progressive overload to give them the right direction. So I think we're really good on the front end, but then we don't think about what that roadmap looks like. And ultimately, that athlete just wants to build confidence. So here's a little food for thought. If you ever thought about people who self-discharged or didn't come back, how many of those people do you think didn't understand what the roadmap was and wasn't outlined properly, and for that reason didn't come back? 20%? 33.7%? Think about that. And I hope that gives you a little like wake up call, because I'm so guilty of it. I'm right there with you. I'm telling you, we're all on this journey together. But the reality is the people who can understand it faster and make changes and adjust, that's the difference between somebody who is a great clinician and a good clinician. And what I'm telling you is it has nothing to do with years of experience. Zero. Yes, you do need some reps, but somebody who's 10 years out could have the same skill set as somebody 5 years out. Why? Yes, one person may have treated the other. Person might have treated more patients or athletes. However, the one with 5 years might have been making modifications and been mentored and making those changes faster. So therefore, it wasn't the total number of people treated, it was the quality of the number of people treated with modifications at every phase, building that skeleton, building the plan, managing outside variables, not being aggressive, getting to 90%, not testing too close to performance, building the roadmap, giving them confidence along the way, and having them know what is ready. And here's the last one: have plan B and C ready. If this doesn't work, what are you going to have to cut out? If you're at week 3 and they can't do plyos, you're going to have to bump plyo to week 4. And then what happens at week 4? Are they going to be able to play? Now you have to build that into the system. They might be able to play 15 minutes, but it still gets them on the field. So don't put all your eggs on one basket of just 30 minutes of play. And like, all right, worst case scenario, are you good with just the last 10 minutes, the last 5 minutes? That's fine. It's my senior year. It's my game. Like I have to be in the game. Okay, cool. So I know I have a little bit of buffer. So plan A is like, all right, we're going to get 30 minutes full contact. Plan B is 15. And plan C is like, you get the last 2 minutes a game. You get to celebrate as a senior, whatever it is. You kind of have to know what people want, like what is the expectation, and then set the roadmap for them. And this is where I think people, sports PTs or PTs in general, sorry, PTs go wrong when they're doing return to sport decisions. Does it work on paper? And then are you focusing on the right things? And if you've ever taken any of my courses, that's the way I'll approach everything. I have an accelerator course that teaches you on acute injury management, some of these principles. I have a strength conditioning summit, which is, building strength programs for athletes at any given stage, 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. And then the reason why I built my sports PT foundations is this specialty, getting somebody from acute, subacute, or managing the timeline to get them back to sport. That's very different than just managing the injury at an acute phase. Acute injury management is just like, don't mess it up, control the variables, and then get them along their way. But now when you have a short timeline, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months ACL, like whatever that timeline is, it's a different ball game. And you have to use some of these principles, but if this fires you up and you're like, man, I really want to know timelines. I want to be able to manage people at any time. Like if they come to me, I can manage it. That's really what you want. You want confidence, right? Like you want that roadmap for yourself. I get it because I'm there with you. And so I've done it. I've learned it. I share it with my team. I share it with physical therapists, and I want to be able to share it with you guys at my upcoming Sports PT Foundations course. That's what this is about. It's really just setting timelines, building the roadmap in a short timeline, getting them back to sport, not messing it up, getting them to 90%, and all the skills in between and the technical aspects of what else needs to be done and considered getting this person back to sport. So that is where PTs go wrong with return to sport decisions. I hope that has helped. I hope it fires you up and to get you into the different mindset of how to manage an athlete all levels. I don't care if it's a weekend warrior. It's the same principles. It's the same. I would treat that same individual. So if you're interested, the next thing to take it one step further is to attend my sports PT webinar. If you're on Instagram, Chris Garcia DPT, go to my link in bio, sign up there, go to my website, drchrisgarcia.com. And it's at the top of the website. Just sign up for my webinar. It's free. I'm going to spend 2 hours on a Tuesday night from 5 to 7 Pacific Standard Time, and we're going to be going over cases. That's on September 6th, whatever the first Tuesday of September is, and 2022, whenever you listen to this. And I'm going to be going through that, and I'm just going to work through a couple different scenarios, couple cases. Here's how to manage it. And it's a very open communication. What do you do? What would you do differently? Why'd you do that? So if you're new and this is like firing you up and you love it, start there. And that's a great place to go. For those of you who've been around my world and you're like, I finally want to jump in, let's do it, then attend the course. And so if you're interested, email me, drchris@drchrisgarcia.com. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next episode. I hope you guys are doing amazing and life is incredible, and you are staying focused despite the chaos in your life. As I mentioned at the start of this, it is the nature of life. Enjoy the ride. If a lot of things are around you and happening, it's because that they're drawn to you. They want that. So being able to manage that and stay focused on everything that you're doing. Some of you are clinicians. Some of you are, doing residencies. Some of you are doing clinicians plus maybe you're getting a PhD or a DPT, or you're adding all these elements. You have a family. You work. You participate in sports, intramurals, whatever it is. That's chaos, and you're blessed with it. So enjoy that and stay focused wherever you are. All right. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.